Missed your gen time. You're about to get it in spades. Like that one when we're done. You're wondering when the latest. Oh, that's us. I'm like, wait, I'm reading our treat. Waiting for brushes to come back in stock. It'll happen someday. It literally is that they keep telling us, oh, 2 weeks. I'm not even joking. Except that instead of telling us, instead of using those exact words, they're like, oh, end of the month. End of the month. Got a very light edge highlighting going on right now just to kind of find my way around the shapes. How I want to bring brightness back in on this. Oh. Win and start hot spotting. Hot spotting is the putting the full brightness of the color you're using where you want it to go. Not necessarily worrying about blending. Although, if you're doing it like I just did there and the paint's thin enough, you'll get the blend naturally. But that won't stay bright because my paint was very, very thin. Painting dirt would be this much fun, Deadbeat. Milner, what's going on? Good to see you. Exactly. Wait. Soon. Nubsars, if you're watching this as someone brand new to the hobby, you would think this looks easy. Your brush control makes you jealous. Why, thank you. And as all things, the more you do it, the more practiced you become, the easier it is. Although I will be very honest and say that things like what I'm doing right now with non-metallic on a very complex shape, I don't think ever become super easy. Maybe they do. But this is some of the most fun that I have with models, just because finding the kind of secret sauce, if you will, for how the model needs to look given its particular shape. This one has a ton of engraving, as you can see. Every piece of armor has like skeletons, other than these deals on his hips, right? If we do a super zoom here, you'll get a feel for how all of these spots have got a ton of engraving on them. So it's a lot of fun. It is very heavy duty to work around all of this and find the shape and get the highlights, going in the same direction, because you literally have hundreds of things you're painting, right? And so on deals like this, I'm not trying to guarantee that my highlight is always 100% correct. Like in this exploded view here, this right here should come down a little darker, like right here, or come down a little brighter, like right in here. Because my light source is from up top, so I wouldn't have that shadow kind of cover as much on the top end of that. But dirt and grime could get in there, so I'm not really worried about it. Again, it's really just finding your pace and where all of the various things start to pop out and take shape. But thank you. Brush control, whatever and however you want to define it, being able to use your brush to get the paint where it's supposed to go in the right amount is the key to painting, right? You hear us say all the time that it's more about the techniques you use and your understanding of light than it ever is about color. Now that sounds silly, because color is what we recognize first as humans in a lot of cases. But when painting, especially when doing stuff like this non-metallic metal, what our major concern has to be is light. Making this read like a reflective surface. Whether you get your light angles correct is a matter of practice. As long as all of your light is consistent, it doesn't have to be correct. Does that make sense? It's like saying, hey, like there wouldn't be a reflection right there on that inside part of his calf muscle because of the skirt hanging so low, right? And so that might not be correct, but if it's consistent, meaning that all of our light falls in a particular direction, right? You can see the bright spot that I've set up down the hip. I have that same bright spot on the rib cage, same bright spot running down the arm, angle-wise, right? Same over here. So as long as everything is pushing towards the same direction and your consistency of brightness is there, and any highlights you put on the other side kind of, dip down for secondary reflections and have a different story to tell, then it'll feel right, whether it's actually right. So I think one of the biggest things for learning these types of techniques is to forget about what's right. Don't think about correctness, right? Think about consistency. Because it's much better to say, yep, that looks like a reflective surface, and then build towards, okay, now, how does a cylinder actually reflect, Than it is to worry about all that right out of the gates. And your brush control, as you mentioned, is the key towards that consistency, right? Pushing paint towards the direction you want the paint to lie in as opposed to away. A lot of people might come in, like on this highlight I just did on there, they might, because it's easier for them to touch the brush here, that push the paint that way, right, from the bright spot away from it, but that will build pigment up along this edge, and you won't get a consistent blend. So you always want to start away from where you want the brightest color to be, or where you want the color that's on your brush to live. I want it to live right here, so I start out here and bring it there, then lift, start out here, bring it here, lift, and repeat, and then it blends as it goes. If anywhere along that journey you push paint from this side back that way, you're going to ruin your blend, or you have a chance to ruin your blend. So just one of the many things to keep in mind when painting three-dimensional, or painting anything really, but three-dimensional objects especially, because of the shapes you're trying to follow the whole time you're painting. Always remember to be moving the brush towards where you want the bulk of the color that you have on the brush to live, not away from it. Even if it means that you got to do something that feels awkward with the model, turn the model upside down to paint that way so that the paint can go in the direction you want. Because for me, I like pulling paint towards me rather than pushing it away from me, which is the case for most people, I think. It's more natural to work the brush from away from myself towards myself. That just has a natural feel in the way our hand works, the ergonomics of our fingers. It's more difficult to start and push paint away, right? And keep a consistent line and hand weight. So sometimes in order to do that, combine that fact with the fact that, okay, I want this color to go from here to there. Well, then it means I might have to turn the model like this, right? Because now I can have both my comfortable line pull like this, but also move the color from where I want it to blend to where I want it to live, right? Blend, live. Okay? So that's why you'll always see artists turning the model around in weird directions and stuff, because even though your hand could ergonomically put the paint in the direction you want it to go, a lot of times that's not a good thing to do. Less paint on the brush, yeah. You'll notice that's why I've always got my thumb palette loaded, right? I take about half, if not more, of the paint that I get on the palette off of my brush before I come over to the model, so that I'm never really glopping a bunch of paint on. I have just enough to get the job done. And then I'm not fighting with texture from the paint and things like that. Yeah, and that is not just for glazing. That's every time you go. The only time you'll see me not wipe paint off my brush is pretty much when I'm base coating. Do we want to make sure that this shine and this shine look like if they were at the same level, they would be the same shine? Same thing here. This shine and this shine look like they're consistent. Now that piece of metal here is back in the distance. It's overlapped by this one, so it might be off a little bit. But if you were to pull it forward, those would line up. That's what you're trying to do with marking correct lighting, or consistent lighting, as we said. Still might not be correct, but it's correct for that spot, right? Thunder brush, yeah, this is all non-metallic. We're doing bronze-ish. You know me, I like my bronzes better than my golds. So we're doing this bright bronze. Using greens. All green. All the time. Thank you, Thunderbrush. This is the Death Knight from Journeyman Miniatures. It is available on our web store. We are the exclusive distributor for Journeyman Miniatures in this hemisphere. Ta-da-da! Sounds very amazing when you say it that way. So you can get them on monumenthobbies.com. You don't even have to have them shipped from Europe anymore. He's an amazing model. I'm having a blast if you can't tell. you know, Space Marine size to him. He's about 105 millimeter, I guess. Something like that. The stairs make him bulkier, but good model. Compared to like the Shinobi, probably close to the same size as the Shinobi bust, right? Yeah, she's about 105 mil. He's about the same size as the Shinobi bust. It's nice waiting days and not weeks for a model. Heck yeah, man. You order it from us, it'll ship out like next day, if not same day. And we'll have Mindworks miniatures models here very soon. So, Mateo and his amazing creations. I am super stoked because he just did Elric of Melnibone, the Black Sword. And I am stoked to do that model. I am going to enjoy painting up Elric. I might even have to start listening to the books, which are an absolute slog. But still. The books are great, right? The Elric Saga is a great read. It is a hard read, just because of the way Moorcock writes. Michael Moorcock. Great storyteller, great world builder, right? Amazing stuff. But yeah, kind of rough to get through sometimes because of his exposés on things that don't feel like they should be part of this. Well, not critical to the story, I guess is the way we say that, right? But I've read them so many times now that I know when to tune in and when I can tune out. So, this model's freaking fantastic, though. I am not going to lie. I am digging this model. I was talking to Mally. Mally, one of the owners of Journeyman Miniatures. It's Mally and Tim Marsh, both great painters in their own right. And I was talking to Mally, and I was like, I started the Death Knight. He goes, oh, I got mine built. I think he might have said he had it primed, but he hadn't started it yet. And I was like, yeah, I decided to do. We had talked about it months ago, and it was like, well, we're going to do metallic paints. He's like, because the model's just too insane, and I don't think non-metallic does it justice. And I was like, I agree. I'll do metallic paints too. And here I am. Because as soon as actually it happened, like at the time that Baby J put it together, and I grabbed it, and I said, hell no, I'm painting this non-metallic. Now, so you can all admit with me that I did this to myself when I start griping about it here in a little while. So far, I'm pretty happy with it. Pretty pleased with the result. Not as bad as I thought it was going to be. The detailing, it speaks volume to the quality of the model. And this isn't just a sales pitch. Obviously, I'd love for everybody to be able to experience this model. But the detailing on the model is so crisp that I can paint all this without too much problem. That's the part that makes it good. I can get all that engraving without feeling like I got to be ultra sloppy. Nice. Miniac and Marco Frazzoni doing the Pizza Boy. Yep. I have a bunch of Pizza Boys in stock, but we're not launching the line until I should have, because Miniac did the damn video. I should put the Pizza Boy up online now. I have a bunch of them, Tim, if you want one. I say we have a bunch of them here at the shop. We are awaiting another big shipment of models that should come in a week or so. And then we'll be putting them up on the shop. So sometime here in May, you'll have a decent selection of Mindworks minis, and then throughout June we'll be updating with more, and then obviously as new releases come out. We're doing a lot of really cool stuff with Mateo from Mindworks, so. Oh yeah, they're amazing models. Again, Mindworks casts all of this stuff, so the Journeyman models are all cast by Mindworks and Mateo as well now, and so the quality that you see, like on the Shinobi, was cast by Mindworks. Mateo is just a king of the resin cast, and a fantastic artist in his own right. He is an amazing painter, although he will use other people's box art from time to time. So much of what the Mindworks visuals are is his own. He's a spectacular painter. I mean, that's all we're dealing with over there, right? Mally, Tim, Theo, all those guys are great painters as well. As just good people. First and foremost is dealing with people you like. They're all amazing. Like that archway thing at the ankle, I think that makes a good dimension for that leg. Probably want to bring a little bit more brightness right. Just tapping the brush tip there. You get a free mini on our birthday? What? That's something I didn't know? Free mini for all. It'd be amazing how many birthdays we'd have all at once. I like that idea though. Free brush on your birthday, kind of free paint. Quick, let's make the decision before Jen's back on. Giving away free stuff. She'll just get it in customer service. She'll be like, so about these emails I'm seeing. What, are you May 30th too? Did I forget this? Is that why you said our birthday? Oh, well, hell yeah. Anybody that's a Gemini on May 30th gets a free model on their birthday. I mean, I know I do. Watch everybody in chat now. Oh, really? I'm a Gemini. I was born on May 30th. Oh, so am I. Very rare that all of us have the same birthday. Everybody's like, boo. Boo, we don't like this plan. Boo. I'm with you, Chad. I feel like that was rigged. Completely rigged. I'm not sure I would hang out with people that rigged it so badly against you. That Monument Hobbies. Free paint on your birthday. As long as your birthday is May 30th. I bet we'd find a lot of people that have May 30th birthdays. Either that or we'd get a bunch of fake IDs. we should have, and like as soon as we announce that, also a website for lightning fast ID service. And we would create fake IDs for people. Guess what we're gonna charge them, chat? Anybody? Anybody? Anybody see my plan here? Anybody see my nefarious, evil, yet gorgeous plan? You too get a free bottle of paint. The cost of 2 paints. Oh, oh, I kill me. You identify as being born on May 30th, so do I. Sugar Rush says, make it so you have to come into the shop on your birthday? Holy crap, dude. It's surprising how many hobbyists we have in the Tucson, Phoenix area, right? And even Flagstaff, like even all of Arizona, you can get to Phoenix, not that bad. Free paint on your birthday, but you got to come to the shop. That's actually a fun idea. Come to the shop on your birthday, you can pick a paint for free. I mean, I'd almost do that. Team Aquarius. You'd show up and next day offer rescinded. Oh, you didn't hear? Oh no, that didn't go over very well. So we killed that one. Instead, we instituted you get to buy us lunch on your birthday. Woo! Everybody loves buy other people lunch on their birthday day. I had no idea it was going to be such a hit. You don't want to be the one that ruins it for everybody, do you? Liking the boots. We only have all of this left to go. Gee. Kill me now. Fake IDs and time to move. All for a bottle of paint. I mean, at some point in time, you just buy the paint. Unless you're just dying to come to Phoenix, land of the sun. Like, and when we say land of the sun, we're not lying. It's all the sun. Like, I'm surprised anybody else gets sun because of all the sun we have. It's the Yo Dog meme. Yo Dog, I heard you like sun. We decided to give you some sun with your son. Just like to layer a little bit of sun on top of your sun over here. It's actually been very cool the last couple of days. I think we must have had like some sort of a storm blow in California or something. Free brush on birthday while supplies last. Sucker. They never last. That's why we couldn't do brushes yet. I mean, once we get brush production in-house and up to speed and feel confident like we want to, then we can start talking about cool things to promos with brushes. Right. Our marketing firm is always like, so, can we do some ads with brushes? That'd be cool. And Jen and I just kind of look at each other. It would be cool. It's impossible right now. A little bit more brightness on that knee, I think, fits. Here, a little bit of brightness coming down here. Sugar Rush, you need some soon. What's the time frame for restock? End of the month is what we're being told. It was supposed to be now. It was supposed to be 2 months ago. So I don't know that you can trust me when I say these things. I would like to say you can. I've asked. The last production updates have all said into May, and that's better than we've been being. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick with into May. But that could very well mean that they ship end of May and that we don't actually see them until, the first week of June. Rest assured, Discord will be the place to be. As soon as they come in, we will kick into overdrive with quality control here because we do all the quality control on our end. And as soon as Jen and the team let us know that looks like everything's golden, we'll put them in. Heck, I think we've got our lacquer for the brush handles showing up next week, or maybe not. Maybe it's also end of May. I think it's also end of May now that I think about it. By like mid to late June and July are going to be a lot of fun because that's when we're really going to start hitting off on doing the brush production here, which I think will be great. Post a lot of updates on that. Be pretty intense. Be the only company in North America doing it like we do. For our industry, I guess I should say. There are some other brush manufacturers for art brushes. But that won't be immediate because we got to train the team, get everybody here comfortable with it. We always hire from within, so we've got a good couple of members of our production team and fulfillment team that are going to jump over there and start doing brushes. But we got to let them feel confident before we put a lot of pressure on them to say, okay, how many are you doing today? I really like this. I don't know if it's going to jive for the whole thing, but it does. It kind of works with this, right? So I think that works. Wow. That would just be good armor if you were painting something, and you just wanted more of a grim, dark feel for your armor. This would be a good armor color for, heck, even Space Marine. I don't know that you want to spend that much time on Space Marine armor, but just doing this dark was pretty easy, right? That's just the dark purple, the dark yellow green, and the dark purple mixed together. And then this mix here, the yellow green and the khaki as your brightest color. That's really good. That's a neat look. Not mad at that. Of course, we got some education from chat about Death Knights. They are kind of fancy boys, so we're painting him with a little more fancy bit of brightness going on. A bit more polish. Are you synth or sable or just synth? We do both. We currently have the synthetic line, which is called our Pro Synthetics. Boom, that's what you'll see me using all the time. Baby J over there uses mainly our sables. Right. You can tell the difference because the red handles are the sable and the blue handles are the synthetics. And our partner factory is in Germany. They have trained us up. Well, they haven't fully trained us up yet because we don't have all the equipment here. We have most of it. But they will be continuing to train us up, and we will be doubling production, basically having 50% of production happening in Germany because they are at a point where they almost can't make more brushes for us because we sell so many. And so we're doubling up. So we have a very unique opportunity because it's very rare that a brush manufacturer will train a basically competition, you know? So we've had to sign a deal with them to make this work. But we have the printer. We're taking raw wooden dowels, and turning them into brushes here, which we will be the only hobby company that does that. Deadbeat, what are you asking? Are they only are they from a particular series or something? What are you asking? The only thing we will not be making in-house initially are the dry brushes. Oh, Death Knights from a particular series. No, I think it's just D&D, right? I think everybody was saying that in D&D, Death Knights are kind of... I mean, he doesn't have a weapon, right? So I thought maybe he was a mage or something, but... You would like to have a synthetic that handles like a sable as close as possible. You found them. Why I paint everything I paint is painted 99% with synthetics. It's hard to tell you that because I do pick up the sables every now and then for really, really fine detail and texturing and stuff because they will hold a point better long term than under pressure. But yeah, I'm a big synthetic fan. I keep forgetting this area of the belt, so I have to go back with the yellow green real quick. finally got a Series 7 and now you'd like to have more sables? Is that your first sable brush? Thing that a good sable brush does is it just loads and offloads paint so well. No other way to put it. It will take paint off your palette and put paint on your model in such a glorious way, because it's, you know, that particular style of brush was created to be the best watercolor brush on the planet, if history is to be believed, right? And I think they've succeeded, right? Because it is difficult to have thin paint draw into bristles. Okay, let's back up. It's easy to get thin paint to draw into the bristles. It's very difficult to get thin paint to leave those bristles, right? And get onto your model or onto your canvas in a consistent way, because a lot of the brushes at the time and even today still will basically just dump a load of paint out with not much pressure from your hand. And when they do that, obviously that can be a royal pain in the butt, big mess, globs of paint that come off. Just basically get a whole drop more than you wanted. So sable holds thin paint very well and releases it in a controllable manner, more akin to the way a paste paint leaves the brush. You know, as you pull a line, you get a consistent amount of paint. As you push harder, you get more. And that's very difficult with thin paints to pull off. That's why the sable is king. Now, with technology being what it is, not all things stay the way they were, and synthetics now in blends can get you very, very close. Our synthetics are super, super close to giving you what you love about a sable, but you're going to deal with the fact that a synthetic will not, in most situations, last near as long. Now, you'll be able to use a synthetic brush for a long time, but as you know, synthetics will gain a little bit of tip curl. And I've got to match that shine up to the shine on the thigh there, so that's what I'm planning for now. We're not using our brightest color right now, but I've got to set up for that next layer. All right. Time we got. Now we're supposed to be done. First time using a fine sable is the best feeling. It just paints so much better. And like I said, it's just really having a brush that allows you to feel like what you intend to do happens, or that when something doesn't happen the way you intended for it, you know why. Oh, I pressed too hard with the brush, right? When you use cheaper brushes, no matter what the filament is, whether it's a natural hair or a blended natural hair or a synthetic or a nylon, you know, when you use those brushes, when they're brand new, every brush can do really well. But you'll find that like paint pools a little bit more with a particular type of brush, especially cheaper synthetics. They will pool the paint up on you. Like as soon as you start moving paint around, you'll find that you feel like you're pushing a blob, right? It's not leaving as much paint behind it because the bristles are very stiff. Usually the diameter of the bristle can be a little bit off, so you run into all sorts of physical problems with the brush that cause it to not feel right. But you never really know what it is, right? It's like you're doing it right. The brush is your biggest problem. When you get a good brush, you do the brush stroke and the stroke looks like you wanted it to. Or like I said, if it's thicker than you wanted it to be, it's because you push too hard. And so you'll do another stroke and you'll have a lighter hand with it and the line gets thinner. And it's consistent from start to finish if you hold the brush steady down that line. And so that's when you know you have the ability to make your painting style come alive on the model, is when your tools aren't fighting you, right? I use a lot of texture on my models, and so having a specifically sharp point at the end of a tube of bristles isn't as important to me, because I do what's called, well, I've named this, so it's not called anything. I call it chisel painting, right? So I will do this. I'll get a brush, right? And so when my brush comes out of the water, it's got a point to it, right? And it's just a standard round point. But you'll see me over here on my hand as I get rid of the paint, right? I'll flip my brush 180 degrees as I'm doing that, and I'll get it into a more chisel-like shape where it's a little bit broad and flat one way, and then it's like knife sharp the other, right? Broad and flat, knife sharp. Because now I have a point when I need a point, because I'm using the edge of that point on the other side, and then as I press, it starts to, and I put more pressure on it, this side starts to flatten out, right? And then I rotate it, and I've got my sharp point again. Right? And so I can gauge the thickness of my line as I go. And then as I press and I do more painting, this starts to flatten out. And then I just rotate my brush 90 degrees and I've got my sharp point again. So you'll see me paint this way all the time. So the style of brush, as long as it loads and unloads paint the way I need it to, at a very high level, then I can paint with any brush. So that's why you'll find me using synthetics all the time. I just like the snap. I like a little bit more stiffness because I get that texture I want. the breast feeling. Yeah, Gosu, exactly. Yeah, the snap of the synthetics is what I really like. Use hog hair. Yeah, exactly, T. Schmidt. Like some of them will, because they don't release paint very well, the paint can start to gum up in the brush very quickly, and so it starts to grab. I like the way you said cat tongue. It feels like it has like a, it's like you're painting on sandpaper, right? No matter the paint. And the thinner you get your paint to compensate for a bad brush, the worse it gets, because the brush then glops your model with paint. So yeah. That's the only problem. I always suggest to people as they're getting into the hobby, don't blow a lot of cash on your tools initially. Find out how you like to paint first. So the $10 set of Walmart brushes is great because it'll put paint on the model. You'll very quickly find out what you like and if the hobby is for you and all that. And then once you get into it, start delving out into other things. Brushes are consumables, right? As much as we would like for them to last forever, they don't. They're not meant to. So as you start, you know you're going to buy different paints, different brushes, and all of that. So start going towards and buy like one Sable. Buy a Sable number 2. That's a workhorse brush that no matter who makes it, it'll be a great brush that you can use. I say that if you get a bad one, make sure you're dealing with a company that you can get a good one. But once you get like a Sable number 2, you'll paint with it and you'll see, is that what you're liking? You will always use that brush, even if you find yourself painting with synthetics more. That brush will always do you good. But you may not go buy a whole bunch more Sables. You may find that you love synthetics, and the way they snap. Because when we say snap, it means the quickness with which a brush goes back to being straight after pulling a line, because when we paint, the brush bends, right? And when it snaps to straight again, that snap is what I like, because it means that I can do stuff like this. I can do really, really fast textures. And every time I touch the model to do that texture and bend the brush, that as soon as I want to start the next line, it's already back to straight. Whereas Sables, as you do this, the Sable starts to bend, which means by the time that it won't hold its straightness anymore. And so by the time you do one stroke and you go back to do the next one, the brush is at a different angle. So your strokes start feeling different. So you need to be able to paint like with the tip, right? And you start doing things very, very slow at the tip. I'm a fast texturer. I'm like bang, 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 bang. And the snap of a synthetic puts the brush as close to back to where it started in a very quick response. So I can paint that kind of staccato texture or do my blends really fast like that too. So for me, that works really well. For other people, they hate that. Some people are like, the brush is too stiff. It's not the way I like to paint. And that's why it's great to try it out before just going and dumping a bunch of money and on an expensive set or a bunch of brushes. Find out what you like and then start heading in that direction. Stonewall says, when synthetics, how do you mitigate the hooking of the tip? So you'll notice most of my brushes, if we were to look at them, don't have hooked tips. They have blunted off tips, right? So by the time I'm ready to put a synthetic away and have it become a basing brush, it's not because it doesn't have a tip anymore or has a hook. It's because it is blunted off. Because like I said, I'm very, very hard on the tip of the brush, right? So you'll see it just isn't sharp at the tip. It starts to kind of have an angle depending. But you'll also know that ties in directly with the way that I paint. I said I'll go through when I get the paint off my brush, and now I've got it wide on one side, sharp on the other, and that's how I paint. So I get my very fine lines by rotating it to the sharp end of it, and I'll paint it. Let's get some paint on the brush. Right. So I put paint on the brush, and I take most of it off first because you don't want to put that much paint on the surface, right? Canvas is different because a canvas has texture, so it's going to eat up a lot more paint. So when you paint canvas, you're generally wanting as much paint as you can get on a brush, which is why brushes for artists painting canvases have bigger bellies. You want a lot of paint. For miniatures, you don't want a lot of paint. So I prefer the shape of our brushes are made this way where they're straight, so they don't hold as much paint, right? And then now you'll notice too, right? It's flat one direction, sharp the other. And then I'll come over here if I want to do a thin line, right? I've talked so long that now I can't. Well, I've picked a color that is absolute crap for painting on my hand, is what I've done, haven't I? All right, so do this again. Then I'll rotate to my sharp side, and I'll pull a thin line, and then I can go to my flat side and do a thicker line, right? And then just keep rotating. And because I'm rotating the brush 90 degrees a lot while I'm painting, not every brush stroke, because I might be here where I want a bunch of thin brush strokes, so I do a bunch of thin brush strokes. And then I might go back to where I want to do a bunch of coverage, and so I'll do a bunch of real heavy things. But in order to do that, I have to rotate the brush 90 degrees to get back to my small brush strokes over here, right? And so as I'm doing, I'm sorry that I picked such a crappy color, but here, let's do it real quick with a dark color. But because I'm rotating the brush, the way the brush is bending is always different, and that's the key towards keeping your synthetics from hooking. Now, some synthetics just do it like day one. Just because they're bad. Don't buy nylon brushes. Right? You're not going to like them. Right, so again, we'll take some of this dark blue or Payne's gray. Right, and again, I'll have my knife edge this way, so if I want to do a very sharp line, I just kind of turn it like that. So this big brush does a very sharp line like you want it to. Then I'll rotate it like this, and it gives me a base coat. Right? And the more I base in an area, do my blending like this, then I turn it like this, and I get my nice thin edge that I want. But I've had to rotate it. So what causes the hook is that, unbeknownst to most people, there's like a subconscious way that we paint, and you might hold your brush the same way. It's a fun thing to look at every time you pick up your brush. A lot of people tend to rotate it to where they can see the letters. And so the brush is generally going to be somewhere from here to here, because you rotate it to where you can see the letters, or unknowingly to where you can't see the letters. And if you see the letters, you rotate it around. Maybe it's subconscious, right? But if you're painting like this, then every time you go in and take a stroke, the hook is always forming the same direction. Right? And you'll go clean it. Come back over here, rotate it to where you can see the letters again unknowingly, and do it again. And so now the brush is always bending the same direction, and that causes the hook, the tip to hook over time. Because I'm constantly rotating my brush as I paint, I never get that hook tip. Maybe on super small brushes. Because without a whole lot of filament, right, it's going, no, I mean, even that guy's good. Might have a slight hook to it, but that guy's good. And these are old brushes. So that's the key with synthetics. But it may not be the way you like to paint, and it may cause you problems with synthetics down the road. So, but these are easy things to change. The rotating of the brush is easy, and I think what you'll find is as you rotate the brush and you use the flat side for wider basing and the narrow side for thin detail stripes, it'll change your life, man. The people that I've been able to have the light bulb go off for the way that I use the brush are literally like, bam, this works. This just makes so much more sense than trying to paint with the point of the brush. Because when you think about a brush as a pen, it's not how a brush is intended to be used. When you talk to master brush makers, right, the reason you want a sharp point is so that you can vary the line width of a line you pull, but you're always painting with the side of the brush. You're never painting with the tip of the brush, right? And if you want to make thinner lines, you buy longer haired brushes that are very narrow, called lining brushes, liners, I think. You don't paint with the tip of the brush. Nobody paints with the tip of the brush, right? That's not how brushes are built. There may be some brushes out there that are intended to do that, but for what we're doing, an artist round is not intended to use the tip to do anything. Little bitty details, but in the scope of what you're painting, it's like 0.001% of what you paint should be using the tip of the brush. You're intended to use the side of the brush, and the tip allows you, right? Having a very sharp tip allows you to start narrow and then pull and get that line weight to just as you want to. You're always using the side of the tip. You shouldn't be using it like a pencil, right? But a lot of people tend to use their brush like a pencil. They hold it almost perpendicular to the brush surface or to the model surface, and you'll beat the crap out of every brush if you do that. You'll blunt your sable tips. You'll screw your brushes up no matter what. So if you can get used to the kind of idea that I'm telling you here, where you have your brush very flat one direction, right, and then very sharp the other direction, now you can do what you need to fine detail wise using the edge that way. And that bug, gotcha, killed him. And then that was a Tyranid advanced scout. And then flat this way, right, for basing. So now every brush becomes super flexible while you're like painting live, because as you go through, like I said, and you start putting pressure on the sharp edge, it starts to be your flat edge, right? So now that's my flat edge, and when I rotate it this way, it gets back to my sharp edge. So they trade places, and that constantly has you rotating your brush around as you do it. Something to think about. May not work for everybody. The thing is art has no rules. So when I say you're not supposed to paint with the tip of the brush, take it with a grain of salt. Paint how it makes you happy, and paint what gives you good results, right? Doesn't matter what I say, doesn't matter what anybody says, no matter how many Slayer swords they have. You can try to emulate what they do and find how that works for you. That's the goal. Take advice from everybody and turn it into your own style. Trying to do exactly what somebody else does may not work for you, because they may have a longer bone on their forefinger, biologically speaking, and so they hold the brush really weird, and you try to do that and it doesn't work at all, right? So who knows? There's a lot of ergonomic issues that happen with the way artists hold stuff, and you know, if you write a lot, you tend to hold your brush like a pen and a pencil, and it's very hard to back up on it and use the leverage you need. So there's myriads of ways to do this, right? There's as many ways to art as there are artists, is what we always say. So hopefully I can give you some good advice. You can go try it, see what works for you. Not a cult. Rex, speaking as a traditional painter, why do most mini painters only use round brushes? Generally because of the scale, right? So if you're painting something tiny, right? And again, so I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to state that the way that miniature painting has evolved with its tools is based off of most of the people not being artists. And I mean that in a way that, not to be offensive, but not being painters on other mediums first, because they don't have the broad spectrum of tools that are able to be used, right? Like cat tongues or the other shapes of brushes that work very well. Flat, wide brushes work very well for base coating, right? And just like and that's what I've used a lot, you know? Like we use our chisel tip brushes for dry brushing, right? It's called an angled shader, right? And it's called an angled shader because in a two-dimensional world, again, it gives you a very narrow way to do things, but you can do that and you can rotate it as you paint. And it can give you a very wide, so it can go from a narrow line into a very wide line very quickly, right? And think about sweeping in the corners of stuff. It's why your broom is shaped like this, because it can get into the corners, into tight spaces, but also cover a lot of area when you're out in the open. So angled shaders are great for base coating, right? But the way we cut them for dry brushing, they're pretty stiff. We cut the bristle length way down. So that they don't bend very much. This brush would need to be about an 1/8 inch longer to really be a good painting brush. You know, so there's nuances like that you know you get used to, and it brings up a good point. Don't be afraid to try other brush styles. I know miniature painters that I've seen that use ceramic painting brushes that have a hook to them. You ever seen this? The brush head is hooked. Here's the body, or here's the handle of the brush, and then the ferrule hooks off like this and has the tip at the end. They're meant for painting the inside of ceramic cups and bowls, right, where you can't get your hand in there. So you want a hooked brush so you can paint, and you're watching yourself paint backwards. It's horrible. But I've seen miniature painters use them in the hook. It drives me nuts. I look at it and I go, hurts my eyes. But for them, it worked great. So there's a lot of tools out there that you should try. Give it a go. Give it a go. Paint Liquor says, well, now I feel called out. Letters up. See? A lot of people also hold. So I love these talks about brush control because there's so many variables to it, and for every person it can be different, which makes it very hard to diagnose why you may be having issues with not being able to feel like you can do the thing you see somebody else doing. Like when I do my blends, they don't look that smooth, and I feel like it's because I can't control the brush or whatever. One of the things that people do is they hold their brush really tight. This one's hard to show, right? Because I can only really do it by overdoing it, right? Look at how red the tips of my fingers turn when I grip it. Right? I see so many people painting out in public. They're just like, I do not want this brush to run away. If I can't go up to you and pull the brush right out of your hand while you're painting, right? If you're painting like this and when I come up and grab it, assuming you didn't react to me and you don't go, hey, that's my brush, right? But if in a perfect world, I could say, stop, and you would stop and I would come up and be able to pull it out of your hand is the way you should be painting. Right? The brush should always be able to fall out of your hand. You've probably seen me painting and lose the brush because sometimes I'm holding the paint or I'm holding the brush so loosely, right? That if I happen to knock it against a part of the model, I'm not seeing it'll whoa, because that allows me to really control. I have everything from barely any contact to then being able to push into it more. Whereas when I grip it, I lose that easy, light touch because your muscles are all taut. So now you're going to hammer the model very tough. So practice on relaxing and breathing and holding the paintbrush very lightly to where you can really feather. Because when I say I'm feathering a color on, the bulk of what's happening there is me just barely holding onto the brush and just letting it skate across the surface without me doing much of anything. And so that can really hurt. It can also fatigue you and make you not want to paint longer when you bunch your grip up like that, right? Because your muscles are tense the whole time. It's also why I painted a standing desk. We can go on about this for years because my shoulders never get tight. I can stand here and paint for 8 hours. My legs may get tired. I got to make sure I don't lock my knees. That's why you'll see me moving around a lot, But you don't ever hunch and roll your shoulders over when you're standing if you have your desk height right. Life changer for me was painting in a standing desk.
Hey, somebody likes us.
Tim says, I only quench one thing and it's only in emergencies. Thanks for the follow. Air Phoenix, thank you. You've dropped yours many times and painted your clothes. Me too. I've got shirts that have that brush stroke right across the front of it because I've, been painting and blah, and it just falls. Thank goodness I don't hit the model much when I do that. Or if I do, it's like the side of the base. You had teachers who would pull the brush out of your hand to make sure you weren't clenching. Deadbeat. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. Tim holds your brush too tight. A lot of people do. Well, because when we write with a pencil, you have to. And you have to grip a pencil or pen tighter because you're putting so much pressure on the surface and you're also perpendicular or more perpendicular to your work surface. So you tend to hold tighter so that you can get the pressure to get the lead or the pen to work properly. If you hold a pen as light as you want to hold your brush, you'd never be able to write because it would skate across the paper and never give you anything. So people are trained, your brain is trained. When I hold a thing like this, right? When I'm holding a thing like this, it's usually one of these, right? And if I'm doing this now as an artist, right? If you take a pencil, right? You can also hold it very light and I can feather and I can get shading, and not very hard strokes, barely anything. But normally I'm wanting to do this, right? Where I see the lines. And so by doing that, I got to grip it so that I can make sure it has positive contact to the paper the whole time and doesn't, especially on a paper towel like this, right? Because it's hitting the bumps. So you're used to holding pencils and pens when you have your hand in that grip, or maybe cigarettes, or maybe something else. But anytime we hold, maybe it's the stylus for your computer monitor, right? But when you're holding things like this, you generally have a very tight grip on it because everything else we do that needs it, your fork for eating, all of that needs a very positive grip so that you don't throw your food all over the place, right? The paintbrush is the aberration. It wants to be able to fall out of your fingers when you're painting. So if there's one thing that you take away from today's stream, it's loosen your grip on your paintbrush. You will find your ability to learn new things and have those techniques happen the way you want them to will go up exponentially over time if you just release a little bit. And your hand will like you more. You'll be able to paint longer, because you won't be dead gripping the model the whole time, or the brush the whole time. Yeah, exactly, Rex, and that's why I showed using the what I call the chisel style, right? Because I take a round brush, flatten it out. It now is a chisel, but it's also a chisel like a cat's tongue, right? I think they're called cat tongue brushes. I never really used them for anything, but they would always wind up in brush sets. You know, if I flatten this out, notice how it rounds at the edges. Here, let's punch in. A round brush is a very, very flexible tool, right? Because it does give me a wide surface at the front of it, but notice how it has a radius to that. It's not a big squared off chunky thing, which is nice because it won't give you very square panel like brush strokes. The brush strokes tend to blend better when it has that radius, so it's very good for that, but you have to try to flatten it out. And then you do have this nice sharp chisel edge that you can do your fine work with, but that fine work is also going to have that rocker to it, that little radius at the end, right? So it allows you to kind of paint the way we do on three-dimensional objects, which is where you don't normally plant the brush and just continually pull a line. You kind of sweep across it, right? So you can pick up that high spot. And so having that radius works really well. So I do believe that the artist round, is the best brush overall for painting three-dimensional objects. It's the thing that I learned and was taught early on to paint statues with, were larger round brushes, because of the flexibility they give you. They get into tighter areas better, you know, especially if you're painting the underarm of a Marine. You know, you're not going to want a wide flat brush to paint up in that guy's underarm. You're going to want a point and a round bristle, right? So it's the most flexible. It doesn't mean that other brushes aren't great for certain things. Base coating, like I said, paint a tank. You definitely don't want to paint a tank. If you don't have an airbrush, buy yourself a really big flat brush, right? Our old BAB is king, right? This thing's huge, right? Base coats, you know. Yeah, and the cat's tongue is great for that because of that radiused edge. It will make sure that your blends are a lot smoother, and it won't give you that straight edge. A squared off, you know, I guess it is called a square tip brush, will cause you to create lines in your painting, because the part that's hitting the model, all the bristles hit equally. So it's like a broom. It sweeps paint more and leaves that stroke behind. So the cat tongue is great for that because it rounds on the edges. That's exactly what it's for. So as you paint, there's uneven contact, because the bristles at the edge are not hitting the surface as the longest bristles are. Only when you press really hard. But when you're blending, you get randomized touch points. So it works really well. Big says I only hit the model when I'm using metallic paint. Stonewall says I've not paid attention on how tight I hold my brush. It's a good one to just for a moment, just pay particular attention the next time you sit down to paint. Think about it, right? It's very easy to change. Everybody that I've found that holds their brush really tight, all it takes is for them to notice that they do. And then they're like, oh, well, I won't do that anymore. And they stop. Now, over time, you might find yourself going back to that habit. So you might have to break yourself of that habit. But it's very easy to recognize and to start to correct. And your painting will get better immediately. You'll be able to do all the things, like, you know, all this started when you know, one of you guys walked in here and said that my brush control was envious. And it's because I'm holding my brush lightly, and you'll notice that I'm just kind of feathering. I hit, for one brush stroke, I might do it 10 times. You'll see some people that are you know, they just go through and do that one thing. Whoop. You know, I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to do that same line, because I like texture, right? But I also, you know, have to have a light hand for that. Otherwise, every time I hit it, I build up more and more and more and more paint, you know? So I have to make sure that the paint I'm putting on initially is very light, so that if I hit it 8 times, it becomes the same as you hitting it once. And the nice thing is that if you can do that, you can also paint the one line thick, right? Because you can just grip a little harder and pull it once, but then go back to a light hold for when you need it. It gives you more flexibility on what you can achieve on the surface at any given time. Because this model has 80 million ways I need to paint it. I can't just paint it one way. I've got smooth surfaces that don't have much dimension to them on the skirt, and then I have these crazy engraved surfaces with, like, you know, nose hairs and stuff that I have to paint. right? I've got this big long cape that doesn't have a lot of crazy detail to it that I need to be able to texture, right? So that's going to be a whole nother way of painting, right? So that's the greatest thing I feel about the way we paint as miniature painters, is that on these sculpts, it's very rare to have one that's kind of painted the same way all over it. You know, it would be like naked dude, like purely no hair naked dude would be the closest model I can think of, you know, or, you know, metal ball. I mean, that's really it, right? Like a smooth surface that has no changes in dimension, and you're painting it, you know. Sphere. Go paint a sphere. One of the hardest things you'll ever do. Is a cat tongue different than a filbert? Filbert, I think, is the real name. I call it a cat tongue, but I think it's called a filbert. I just never can remember that. The filbert may be thicker. Is that right? I think the cat tongue narrows as well to a point, whereas the filbert is thicker, or vice versa. Well, it says, man, I wish noticing a bad habit was all it took for me to start correcting it. It is. Well, it's that and a want to correct it. Your grip is a stress thing. More detailed painting makes you nervous, so you squeeze tighter. Oh yeah, definitely. And that's why lots of detail will turn people off from painting, because that's where you start to fatigue, because you grip. You know, I know people that grit their teeth. Jaw clenches, fingers tighten. Paint the detail. Paint the eye. The easiest way to paint the eye is to go, okay, boop, and not even think about it. Naked dude with metal balls. Easiest model ever. All right, folks, I'm out of here. End of stream. We got a lot done today, although it doesn't look like it because we're still just Green Armor Man, right? But we got a lot of the detailing done to get our stuff set up to where our next color will start to read as metal. Right? We've defined a lot of our values, got our volumes built up on the way the shine and reflection are going to hit these surfaces. Kept a lot of the detailing on there without getting too heavy-handed. I think my favorite part is the backside of this leg. Here's a good example of what holding your brush loosely will do. Look at the fine nature of my lines here. This is where's the brush I was using? Here's the brush I'm using. Right? Look at how much bigger the brush is almost than the brush strokes that you see. Right? That's all because I'm basically painting with like the longest single hair in the brush because I'm hitting the model so lightly. Right? And this is a number 1, so it's a small brush. Zoomed way tight. But you can see the resolution of the lines that you get, and so now your blending can get better because those lines get closer together. They're very thin instead of being chunky, and that's all because you can, you know, realize you're holding your brush loose and give you that ability to feather. And that's what you'll find is the difference between good blends and blends that are chunkier and noticeable. All of them just, you know, equate to how you want your style to be, though. There's no right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just do what you want to do. Jen with all the links. Make sure you go check out our store, monumenthobbies.com. It will get you into the wonderful world of Acryl. Not only do we know how to hold our brush, but we also make the best paints in the biz. So go try them. You'll love them. Thank you for hanging out with us. The Discord server is great. Thousands of artists just like you. We get to hang out over there 24/7. So if you want to learn more, come hang out, ask questions, show off your work. We love all of it. Come hang out with us on the Discord server. It's fantastic. And then the FLGS link will lead you to our store finder over on the website so that you can see if there's a store close to you, one of our retailer partners that carries our stuff. So you can just walk in, support your local gaming store. They do all the hard work. So thank you so much for hanging with us. Great to have you. Kavaja, thank you so much. Thanks for all that. If you're new here, hit that follow button, please. We stream 5 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Like tomorrow coming up, we stream at 12 noon Pacific time till 2 p.m. So a little bit earlier, we call it our hobby lunch. Tuesdays and Thursdays, like today, we start at that 2 p.m. slot and go to 5. All times Pacific. So if you're brave, come here lots. So hopefully we'll see you back here tomorrow for some lunch and hobbying, where I continue to paint ridiculous amounts of non-metallic bronze. So it'll start taking shape. Well, it might not. I don't know. It depends on if we decide to do the boots or if we go up here. It may take all of tomorrow's stream to get this like this. And then, you know, anyway. Have a great one. We'll catch you on the flip side. Stick around. We're going to raid somebody. Show love wherever we wind up. And we will see you mañana. Adios, gang.